So, hi everybody, I'm Dror Gurevich, CEO of the Velocity Network Foundation, and I have with me today Ike Bennion, Product Marketing and Strategy at Cornerstone, the leading talent management software solution vendors, and we're here to talk about Cornerstone, Velocity Network, and all things blockchain for HR. So, hi Ike, how are you?
Hi, Jordan. Doing good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for joining us. Let's start. Why don't you start with presenting yourself and how did you find yourself in the talent management space?
That's a great question. So I've been in the talent management space for roughly 6 years now. I found myself there because I had been doing a lot of work with the C-suite in a previous role, actually, and a company thought that that might be valuable. Turns out it didn't need to be, but I found myself doing implementation consulting for a small startup that was doing learning software. And then from there, started to hop around the HCM space, so doing recruiting, performance, content, and then back to learning again. And so now I'm here with Cornerstone, and I was approached about this exciting opportunity from what is now my manager, David Price, who sits on the board, and I sit with him as a proxy. And he needed some help to start to unpack and think about how the Velocity Network Foundation would apply to Cornerstone, how would add client value, that sort of thing. And so that's how I became involved with the foundation.
Yeah, this is great. Could you describe Cornerstone in a few sentences? You know, the type of solutions you provide, prominent customers, number of lives you're touching, just so people will understand the context of where we're coming from.
Yeah. So we are a specialist in talent management, as you had mentioned. We have quite a few practitioners that we have hired in multiple capacities in order to not only provide software, which includes recruiting, performance, careers, learning. We're developing a next-gen LXP, content, a core HR system in certain markets and more. But we also have services that help companies to receive a consultative help as well, to think about how to do change management in their organizations, to roll out new things, that sort of thing. And we have under our belts now about 7,000 customers, 75 million lives that we touch every day with, we have as users, and some of the prominent customers that you're familiar with would be like Wendy's here in the United States. They're a great advocate of ours and are always thinking and tweaking how they're doing their systems and trying to be forward leaning. And we have a number of other major logos and names that you would know in the finance space, healthcare, manufacturing, in all parts of the world.
Yeah, I always love what you're doing, and I think you guys are great. And what I wanted to start with is, you know, to hear from you, what made you join other HCM and education titans as founding members of Velocity Network? What was it that made you take that quantum leap?
So to put it succinctly, I think it's the strong possibility of blockchain to revolutionize what we do in human resources. I was just thinking this morning as I was getting ready that so much of human resources and so many functions and operations that we do are just data problems disguised as something else. Like performance reviews is trying to assess a complicated subject, an individual, a worker, by also biased and emotional beings, and trying to make it fair, trying to make it a level playing field across, 100 people in an organization or 1,000 in a company. That's a data problem ultimately at the end of the day. And
I just love this metaphor. Seriously, this is so insightful.
Well, and if you think about recruiting too, it's the same thing. We have the data of one sheet of paper to try and make a decision about a complicated human being, and often that reflects into the past, but we really need to be hiring somebody for what they can do in the future. And again, that's a data problem. And so if you have a new paradigm for how you think about data, how data can influence and impact HR, it becomes really revolutionary in how you even think about human resources as a practice. And so I think we saw that as just this little germ of an idea that had strong potential to really change and disrupt the human resources space, the space that we play in.
But that's an answer why blockchain. That's not an answer why join the Velocity Network.
Yes, that's a good point. So why BNF is that I think the nature of it has to be open. I think that data is going to be a problem, and we have to establish an inherent trust with the users who are going to be participating with us in this network. And to do so, we have to change the way that we're thinking about how data is used and stored for users, and we also have to have an open platform that isn't controlled by any single entity. Because for us to maintain a lifetime of value, not only for users or ourselves, but also for customers who are going to be ingesting this data, there has to be an open governance. There has to be a predictable and many voices in the governance process in order to really maximize the value that we can see over time. Just because if we're interested in creating a truly global network, we have to represent it globally as well. And I think Velocity has that potential. It has that structure, architecture, makeup in order to fulfill on that need.
Now, I mean, I would say that the age of centralized platform has come to an end, right? Although the big platforms definitely helped build the internet as we know it today, but from the march of big platform CEOs to congressional hearings, you can see that that the future should have some sort of a more ecological, more balanced, more fair way of running ecosystems, and a distributed governance structure such as an open and distributed governance structures such as the one we employ in Velocity Network Foundation is probably one of those solutions. Great, great. So you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, and let's even say that every large entity that was centralized was altruistic. It's
Correct.
still like putting a giant mound of gold in a vault. Somebody's
Correct.
going to want that. And so
Correct.
if you have a centralized platform, you still have inherent risks just by the construction, let alone decision making and governance.
Correct. Correct. Why don't you share with us what benefits your customers will see from your participation in Velocity Network? Let's move to talk about Cornerstone, right?
So, as you know, we participated in the Velocity Experience Center, which is a simulated environment, I would say, of blockchain passing back and forth between even some of our competitors and other players in the space to ourselves and to ingest it into our systems, which I think is a really
It's
powerful
amazing.
idea.
Yeah, it's amazing to see Oracle, Cornerstone, and
Mhm.
SAP together sharing a utility layer. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, it's for even us all to be in the room and do co-marketing and things like that together. I think says something. But no, I appreciate my colleagues who we get to be in competitive deals with every day. But for Cornerstone, we did an inspection use case. So meaning that we integrated with our ATS, which isn't our strongest of our systems. We're now investigating doing learning, which I have the pleasure of working on day in and day out. But for that recruiting use case, when we took it to clients and we actually got their feedback of what they thought about it, trying to get a value on it so we can understand what investment we needed to also place in furthering that investment, they said that overwhelmingly this changed the candidate experience. That it was kind of this unquantifiable but an inherently valuable thing that people in recruiting talk about all the time.
Yeah.
That the amount of time to sit and click through a form and to submit all this data now just disappears. Now, just in 2 taps from a smartphone, just like when you're ordering, I don't know, like Chinese on your on Postmates or something like that, the experience is very similar. And I always say, though, that you have to think about this even beyond just the value that you get from an ATS. Like now, this user can use it to apply for a mortgage or fill out government forms or things
Correct.
like that. That potential exists just in this very simple thing that we did to demonstrate this back and forth between multiple human resources companies. And it's an exciting thought that not only can we have this impact on that level of just applying for jobs, but it's also huge for customers and their users that they now get an added benefit beyond the walls of just thinking about employment.
Correct. Correct. I always say that financial capital and human capital are the key factors in growth of global economy. And while we see exciting developments in improving the efficiency and speed to deploy financial capital, human capital is left behind. Although now more than ever, with the effect of COVID and the fourth industrial revolution, that both crushing job markets across the globe, we need to accelerate our ability to develop and deploy human capital on a global scale. Now, waiting for 3 to 4 weeks, right, to get verified information about a candidate, so you can make it, the final hiring decision, it's insane, right? And if you can do it in 3 seconds, right, that's the future. That's what we need to accelerate the ability to deploy human capital efficiently and mobilize skills as the labor market requires. So I think it's much more than the candidate experience, and I think that employers will see that as they quickly improve their speed to hire and speed to make deployment decisions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at just this recent disruption with COVID, we saw unemployment that was larger than what we saw in 2008. That's huge, and it was in a single tiny spike. And a spike like that, it can have devastating effects that we're all feeling the repercussions of. And it's because you have this sudden misplacement of resources. You have this slack that suddenly has been created, and everything to the sides of it is now disrupted. It's losing productivity. And it's because now we have to do exactly as you said, Dror. We have to look at every single one of those candidates in a hiring process. We have to compare them with something else. But meanwhile, productivity is lost. We have to lay off more people. But imagine if we could take that slack and, because of better data in the system, shorten it down dramatically. And so that we can put those people back to work in new places. Absolutely. There's opportunity that we can start to see. I actually make the illusion myself. I'm glad that you do the same, for finally starting to see human capital in the same way that we can see financial capital, that they're assets. We understand where it is, what it can do, and where we can deploy it most effectively, and also do it quickly, which I think is the important promise of blockchain too.
Yeah, I always say, imagine global commerce where payments take 3 to 4 weeks to verify and reconcile. It sounds insane, right? Well, this is the situation in the labor market, right? It's a useless exercise to even start calculating the cost of this friction to the global economy. By the way, and the lost opportunity for individuals. All right. This is great. Do you have a time horizon for when you will go to market with the solutions based on velocity?
So we're investigating that right now, actually. That's a great question for us. So I'm in the process of meeting with a number of clients about a new use case, as I expressed. We are going to issue credentials from the learning management system. And so as people who have been watching the market know, we acquired our next largest competitor, Saba, who had quite an impressive product set. There's a reason why they were nipping at our heels in almost every deal. And so we now have this powerful opportunity to consider how we can do this in either of our solutions or both of our solutions. And that's the work that we're doing now. We have a great engineering team that has been working with me for the last 2 years, 1.5 years. And they are knocking on my door constantly to try and see when they can get back in their hands into blockchain. So I think it's only a matter of time, but we anticipate we are strongly working towards trying to have something available when we go live with mainnet this year, which will be really exciting.
This is great. So I want to move to you personally. You're personally, very much engaged and active in the work done on the Velocity Network Foundation, and we'll love you for that. That nonprofit that governs the network for the good of all its participants. I want to hear from you. What's your personal take on this? What drives you personally to be so involved?
So that's a great question. So I wake up every day to go to work because I believe that there's still equity to be had for important populations in the job market. I'm personally a gay man myself, and I know how my community was treated in the past. If you came out, it was really devastating for some people. But I know I'm not going to pretend like that's disappeared just because we've entered the 21st century. If anything, it's more important now. And I think that, again, like I alluded to, that dumb piece of paper, that 1-page resume that's still being used that makes decisions that impacts people's lives, where they live, their mortgages, who they marry, that sort of thing, that there needs to be more equity in the job market. And I think blockchain has that promise to deliver on that, because now we can move from one page of paper with 20 points of data to 10,000, multiple thousands of data points that now can be fairly and easily consumed by artificial intelligence to really bring forward who is competitive, who can really fill a position and do it well, and make progress for a company, and then in turn be rewarded as well for that work that they've done. And I think that blockchain is what's needed to help answer some of those problems that we've been struggling and grappling with as a society for a long, long time. So personally, learning is a big piece of that. I think it's important, and that's why I go to work on learning every day. But then also, I think that blockchain is a huge part of that, and why I think it's so exciting and a big potential for the market.
That's amazing. I've never thought of this. Me personally, I'm just so pissed that people have zero control over, their personal data, right? Zero control, zero ownership. And then you have this angle. I think it's fantastic. So last question, what would be your message to labor market and education stakeholders in this context? If you have one call to action or one message that you want to convey.
I say blockchain's here. It's time to figure it out. That I have so many people who say, so when is it? When is it? When is it coming for Cornerstone? And I said, how about last October? Last October is when we integrated. So now is the time to get your feet in the water, because just like it's been wrapping around our lives in so many places, albeit sometimes invisibly, in finance, supply chain, legal, etc., it's coming for labor. And it's a good thing that it's coming for labor. But if you're behind, it's going to come for a price for you. And so now is the right time to jump in and to understand its implications and how you can get the value instead of chasing after the value.
This has been super interesting, and thank you for your insights. This is it for us on this session. And I really appreciate you taking the time and joining us, and really enjoyed it. So have a great weekend. Keep safe, and let's continue the great work that we're doing for this.
Absolutely. Thank you for your help.
All right. Thank you very much.